Good morning, and yet another exciting interview around trade, around commerce, around economic development with both David Winfield and John Treleaven. There is no shortage of stuff going on in the world today, and we've got lots and lots of talking to do and opinions to share. John Treleaven, how are you this morning?
I am terrific after yet another mild tremor in the Canada-US trade relationship launched apparently mid-air as the president flew off to Asia.
Yes.
But
Mild. Right. Well, listen,
Well,
John, so many of these guests we're having, which are providing very valuable information to our listeners, which is really what we're trying to do, provide information for Canadian businesses to react to this tariff stuff. And
yeah,
you are brilliant in getting these speakers. Why don't you introduce David for us today?
well, in the interest of transparency, David and I are former colleagues. We worked together twice, once in Ottawa for several years on Canada, Mexico, Canada, Latin America issues, and in the embassy in Japan. Um, David had a career as a, on the boots on the ground trade commissioner, but so successful that in 1989 he became Canada's ambassador to Mexico and was there through to 1995. So he saw how these extremely complex agreements, not deals, agreements actually reach fruition. Beyond that, though, when he left the government, he became vice president of government relations for Northern Telecom Networks for 5, 6 years, David.
yeah,
So he has seen government corporate relations, not just as a diplomat, but as a practitioner, and of course, with many levels and many national governments. Then, for 5 or 6 years, he ran what was called the Toronto Centre, and this was a creation of CEDA, the Department of Finance, the Canadian government, building capacity among global central banking agencies. And more well during that after that. No, and then you move to Malaysia, and
yes,
we're
I did.
a senior advisor to the Malaysian Central Bank. So, John, in terms of our ongoing conversation about this trade war, David brings such a three-dimensional set of experiences from on the ground, working with hundreds of Canadian companies in a transactional environment, trade leads, market intelligence, to a government policy level as a practitioner through the negotiations of NAFTA, and then on a global basis. He
David,
lives, he
I,
and Carolyn live in Mexico. And as you know, from the beginning, I wanted to extend our discussion of the trade war to Mexico. Nobody better than David Winfield.
wow. Wow, David, you got a lot to live up to.
It sounds like my obituary, actually.
Well, I would say when I worked with David in Ottawa on Latin America, his favorite saying when a call would come from the minister's office to get something done, his favorite saying, I've almost crocheted, it's all here somewhere. We just have to put it together.
Well, I have a first question for you, David, to get you going.
Yes, please.
And it's one I think on the top of most Canadians' minds. What's really going on when Trump loses his senses and says this, and tomorrow says that, and the next day says that? What's really going on underneath? Are those individuals that are involved with the negotiations, are they almost ignoring that? Or please tell us, because we're all being in this sort of whiplash. Maybe that's not actually happening in reality underneath.
That is what is happening in reality. And people like ourselves who worked in the guts of the department reacted to whatever was the politicians were telling us.
Wow.
And in Trump's case, it must be extremely confusing for those who are working, if there's anybody working in Washington these days.
Wow, that's not good.
No, it's not. It's
I thought
not.
I thought there was some sort of cabal that was never really emotionally impacted whatsoever.
Well, there probably are a number of people like that, but
Hmm.
generally, you try to figure out what is going to be the next step, and
Ah.
where you need to go next.
Well, as Larry Herman points out in the Globe and Mail today, as usual, Trump is acting in the sunlight because the book that was ghostwritten for him in 1984, The Art of the Deal, spells it all out. And he always, before a deal is signed, throws another spanner in the works.
Yes, he does.
I I wrote a letter was published in the Times Colonist some long time ago when I compared baseball pitchers, golf club designers, and ministers of finance, and said in all three cases they succeed when they deceive the batter, the golfer, or the taxpayer. In Trump's case, there's no deception. He
Which
wrote
is,
the book.
And don't forget, then until a deal is over and done with, you don't have a deal.
yeah,
No.
And until that last minute, there's going to be all sorts of confusion and rumors and all sorts of things going on in the background and in the foreground that will take you off base.
All
so
of which, over time, raised the cost of the deal to the ultimate so-called beneficiary, in this case, the United States consumer.
mm,
That's all that's happened. David, I mean, we're looking at it from Canada, of course, and you're looking at this three-dimensional puzzle from the south of the Rio Grande.
Yes.
How have you seen the Mexican government, react, strategize, whatever, to what's going on today?
I think brilliantly. In many ways, what President Scheinbaum is trying to do is walk a tightrope. And that's a very difficult tightrope because, on the one hand, there's a lot of history in their relationship with the United States, as you well know. On
I
the
have been
other
to the
hand,
Alamo, David.
the Alamo is part of it. And on the other side of it, of course, is the relationship with Mr. Trump, which has to be handled in a particular way. And she's doing, as far as I'm concerned, very, very well in carrying that out.
yeah,
And according to Mexican sources, she has an 80% approval rating within her country.
yeah. She's standing up to Trump brilliantly, in my opinion. Um,
Yes,
in terms of Canada diversifying its trade, it's to me like a big freight ship, and having to move that ship takes a tremendous amount of effort and time to make it go left or right.
you're speaking to two people who actually have been trying to do that over time,
Wow.
both
Wow.
in Japan and in Latin America.
Right.
Yeah,
So here, Carney.
David's the only guy I know who could water ski behind a super tanker.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Along with John.
So Carney is trying to do this.
Yes,
How realistic is it that we are going to be able to shift this huge Canadian trade ship in any kind of time that's going to help our economy?
very good question. And it's going to take us, my guess, 10 years or so
Oh,
to
wow.
get there.
Mm,
Don't forget, it's so easy to go across the border, drive across the border, and go into the United States and meet with people who speak your language, who understand your culture.
hmm.
Whereas going overseas is difficult. It's not easy. You deal with language, you deal with cultures, you deal with a whole lot of different elements of dealing with people.
There's just physical barriers. Like I want us to do more business with Mexico because in a large part, a lot of Canadians are familiar with that country. But there's
Yes,
a physical barrier in the middle.
that's right. And as one of our ministers said, you got to get over that mountain somehow or other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there are other issues. The structure of the Canadian economy doesn't make it particularly easy for businesses to break in. I learned this years ago in a trade mission from Costa Rica. We had the banana producers up because CPCS was going to do a banana railway rehabilitation. And whereas in the United States, the banana producers could sell to large grocery store chains, small ones, local chains, and just look at Iowa or whatever, they concluded that in Canada, there was so little competition in groceries, there were so few huge companies that Costa Rican banana producers couldn't supply.
Mm-hmm.
Just the nature of it.
Yeah. Yeah, except
And
that we will likely therefore end up capitalizing on our natural resources in a greater way than we have in the past, because that's something that we can produce at a global capacity level,
That is
oh
correct.
yes, oh
right?
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean again, the last time I was in Ottawa, we did an input-output study of Canadian exports, a net gain to the Canadian economy from all these sectors. Well, right up on top was agriculture, forestry, mining, and indeed fisheries at that time. No reason to shy away from that, and I think the Prime Minister is doing a great job of focusing attention on some of our greatest strengths. In terms of trade diversification, though, if I can, David, in his early career as a trade commissioner, and myself, our main aim in life was to try and find turn companies abroad who had no natural reason to deal with Canada, because it's much easier if it's China and potash, and they need it, into customers for Canadian products. And both of us did that in many ways. The most important was to send a qualified trade lead to a Canadian company that somebody in Sao Paulo or in Tokyo wanted to do business with.
But
That's what's necessary.
it used to be much easier, John, when you had the Department of Industry, Trade and Commerce as an intermediary, because
Yes.
you had a group of people who were experts in these various industries across the country,
Yeah.
and
That's
they
right.
knew it.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. Okay, so we've got to adapt. But it's still very, very important that the trade commissioner at the pointy end of the business deal understands the market and knows the people who are playing in the market.
Yes.
Well,
Free trade.
I have a question for both of you, okay?
Yes.
Because you're both sort of from the same background to some extent. We're now looking at Europe and we're looking at Asia as two of our new or more expanded diversification partners. And I'm going to put you both on the, what's the word, on the hook here, on the point. What are some of the disadvantages and advantages of diversifying to those two trade areas, please? In other words, I'm your client. I'm going, which way should I go? And both of you would go, well, you might go there, but then at the same time, there's a downside. Let's hear this.
I would go first to Europe. Why? Because languages tend to be somewhat the same, and most Europeans speak English, as do most Asians, by the way, or many Asians do. Uh, but there is a difference in attitude and culture. And it makes it so much easier to be able to deal, for example, with a Dutchman or a Frenchman or a German than it is with a Malaysian or a Thai or
Really?
yeah, somebody like that.
Wow.
And I'm not being denigrating
No,
of those people at all.
no. And that of course, let me just paraphrase that then. We're looking at assets and how do these assets integrate with each other?
Yes,
And one must, if you're doing good proper due diligence, understand the barriers to business. If it's language, if it's culture, if it's attitude, those are real. Those are
Yes,
not
they are.
racist.
Oh, yes,
They're not prejudiced. They're real,
they are.
right?
And more than that, it is tying up a personal relationship, which takes more time in Asia than it does in Europe, for example, or it
Okay,
does certainly in the United States.
okay, huh?
And there's a overriding reason why that relationship is important. Most of Canada's exports to countries abroad are inputs to businesses.
That's right.
We don't buy Super Bowl ads in Japan to sell hula hoops. So a relationship between a business and a customer is considerably different than a relationship between two businesses, because the buyer of technology or a product is betting the future of his or her company on that Canadian supplier. That takes trust.
Yeah.
The hula hoop you buy, you try it. Oh, that Canadian hula hoop's not too bad. And well, of course, we both had the experience in Japan where relationships are like extremely important. What I would say in answer to your question, John, is to Europe or Asia. I don't think we need to worry about whether it's Europe or Asia. It's where is the most promising customer that I can find or has been introduced to me that involves the lowest risk to my business to, to ship product, to sell product to them. And we've had now 2 interviews with Carolyn Tompkins at the Forum for International Trade Training. Behind what David and I spent much of our careers doing is the need for businesses in Canada that have the sophistication, the training, the IP, the human capital to grow their business and grow their profits in a higher risk environment than the United States. It's a complex picture.
It
I,
is.
yeah, I really appreciate your comments. I'm particularly intrigued by the relationship part and how a lot of policymakers forget that piece. That when, in
Oh,
fact, you're in
Oh, yeah,
business,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah,
when you're in business, you're actually in a relationship with somebody, trying to convince them that there is value that in what you're selling and a benefit to them.
yeah.
And
It
that
has it has
takes there's a certain humanity to that.
Well,
yes,
there's humanity, but the buying decision that a company makes abroad to buy a Canadian product has to reflect it in their bottom line. And it is a risk for a company several thousand kilometers away to trust a Canadian
But in terms of this,
company.
John, it would therefore be easier, as some conclusion to my question here, or at least some sort of finish line a bit, that it, in the totality of all these factors and variables, it might be easier to start a relationship with a European-based company than an Asian one. There are different cultural elements to that relationship that I don't understand from the Asian side, and therefore Canada has to get a lot better at training our businesses at dealing with that. David, is
that's
there
Well,
right.
something
Exactly.
hey? Okay.
yeah.
And
Well,
building
but
trust. I agree with John entirely. You've got to build trust in the other person that you're
Mhm.
dealing
John,
with.
just to be a contrarian for a minute about Asia, look at the immigration profile for Canada. We have huge, trusted family, personal links into Hong Kong, into China, into Malaysia, into India. Um, I was in Hong Kong for 4 years. One of the things we did during that period was, this was in the 80s, establish something called the Hong Kong Canada Business Association, because there were a lot of Chinese, a lot of Hong Kong investors coming over, buying real estate companies and whatnot. But the British government represented them in this country. Well, the British government didn't give a damn. So 3 of us established the Hong Kong Canada Business Association in a hotel room in Calgary in 1993. Robert Eisenman, lawyer from Montreal, was the main spark plug who was dealing with real estate. Within 6 months, it became the world's largest bilateral trade association. Thousands of members. And it continues. And so, I mean, our ties to Europe are immense. But I'm just saying, you know, in response to our challenge, we can go both directions. And the Prime Minister currently is in Asia. And we have we got huge advantages. Look at
Okay, John, just
Yeah,
a second.
just hold on a minute.
David,
In Mexico, we established in 1980 something. I'm trying to think of it now. Maybe anyway, it was the Canada-Mexico Business
absolutely.
Chamber of Commerce, with the blessing of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And that became, when Prime Minister Chrétien came to Mexico and had to make a speech the day after President to be, Colosio was assassinated, we had over 500 people in the ballroom at one of the hotels in downtown Mexico City. And it was just an incredible show for the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister gave one of his best speeches ever.
I agree with David, and I was in the room.
You were, yes.
At that time, we had, in response to NAFTA, the government of Canada was spending a lot of effort to actually drive trade leads, drive the intercorporate relationships. And so there was a major Canadian trade show in Mexico, and I think there were 125 or 150 Canadian companies and hundreds of Canadian business people.
125 Canadian companies.
Okay, but I'm going to play the contrarian again to you, John.
Okay.
Here we go. We're in a little bit of a back and forth. So, generally speaking, that we're all going to go the path of least resistance. Generally speaking, okay, on whatever endeavor we're trying to do, and that's what's happened. What you guys are talking about, and then Canadians here, and even immigrants in Canada, their path of least resistance will go to their cultural roots. You're right,
Yeah.
John, that Asians will in Canada will generally probably want to work with their Asian counterparts. It's different today. Trump made that all break down. Now we are forced, just a moment, let me finish. We are forced now to establish relationships. It's not path of least resistance. I might have to now work with and make a lot of changes in my company. I might have to learn a language, make culture. I might have to do some training. It's different now that we have to do these things.
It is different, and we have to do those things because it is no longer easy just to cross over the U.S. border.
Yes.
And deal with your counterpart in the U.S.
Right.
You have to go outside, and you have to learn how to deal with other people. And
when you two were busy and active, Canada was a master at change management. We knew how to change. We were flexible. We were innovative. We were creative. Guess what, gentlemen? This has not continued. We've become lazy.
Yes.
I disagree. I don't think
you do.
I do not believe at all that the corporate sector in Canada has become lazy. I think that they have been we're talking about a broad range of companies. And David, please speak for you. You were working for a major Canadian company that had a huge global footprint.
Oh, we're planning to pick on you, you know.
And when both.
No, sadly. But the truth is that Canadian companies quite wisely have been creating value for tens of millions of American consumers very successfully for many years. That is not a fault. And it's not to blame the United States for buying stuff from Canada, some instant hostile partner. The issue is the risk profile is changing, and it's changing away from the United States. I completely agree.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what David says. Okay, that was your rebuttal, John.
But we both know that there are hundreds thousands of Canadian companies who've been very successful in non-US markets. There now needs to be more because that risk profile south of the border is changing. How do we do that is one of the things that we're going to discuss as we go through this podcast.
Well, one of the things that you do is there is a Canadian trade mission going to Mexico in February of this coming year, 2026, led by Dominique LeBlanc, who has many hats in the cabinet. From February 15th to February 20th, it's going to be in Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara. And it will be covering a broad range of industries, agriculture and processed foods, advanced manufacturing, clean technologies and clean energy, creative industries, informatics, and commercial communications technologies.
So there's an opportunity.
There is a huge opportunity, but it's got to be followed up. And you've got to build what both John and I have been talking about, and that is trust in the counterparts in whatever country. Now, it's been made a little easier in Mexico's case, but there's still doubt.
Well, and NAFTA and Kuzma now paved the way.
Yes.
But I'll never forget being at a trade conference just before COVID in Canada. And there was a breakout session on NAFTA. And the officer representing the Department of External Affairs, who remained nameless, basically said, NAFTA paves the way. There's all kinds of new opportunities, of course, in the United States and in Mexico. But it's the company's responsibility to read and understand the agreement.
Are you
John,
kidding? I haven't read
I'm telling you the truth.
agreement?
It's the only time in my career when I actually got a little angry with one of my former colleagues. I took him aside and said, no, it's the government's responsibility, having spent all the effort to create NAFTA, to be very specific about the opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's why that trade show happened in 1995.
Yes.
But we've forgotten all that. And it was appalling to me that people would think that. But I have to say, Larry Harmon's column in the Globe today sort of laments the fact that Canadian industry didn't respond to Mr. Trudeau the Elder's third option. And I remember a time when Mr. Chrétien, in his speeches from the throne, would say that China is a priority market. Brazil is a priority market. Huh? What is that?
Mexico was a priority market,
yes.
But we seem to forget that.
Yeah,
because the politicians basically said, we have the NAFTA, we don't need to do anything more.
Our job is done.
Our job is done. We've got other problems to deal with.
Okay, gentlemen. It's fascinating, this media that we're living in. I have to say that is a lot of way that the characteristics of how people listen to us now are some of the ways in which we interact with each other. And they're very, very, very different than the way some of us did business a while ago, in that it's down to microseconds.
Yes,
I'm going to bring some clips out of what we're doing here today, and I've done some clips of John. The bulk of the attention is in the first 30 seconds. Imagine that. All of what we're trying to do is having to be conveyed in that kind of time frame.
Yep.
That is bullshit. Here you go. There, I'm swearing. But what I'm going to do is that we're at 30 minutes, so we're going to have to stop, unfortunately. I'd love to get David back in a couple months. But may I leave you with this? What are some of the characteristics of a Canadian business person that they should have to survive in this new world, David? We've talked about it all through the session, about how we used to be, how we are. John's argued with me about it. And then I'm going to ask John the same question. What are some of the personal characteristics that we have to strive for to survive?
He has to be interested in what he's selling, first of all. Number two, he has to be interested in the people he's selling to. And he needs to be able to convey that in a convincing way. And he needs to be able to build trust.
And if he
Easy to say, hard to do, all those things.
and if he or she are to actually conclude a profitable business, they have to deeply understand, as deeply as possible, why their potential customer is interested in their product. Walk in the steps of your customer. And companies that do that well will succeed, and they'll actually make money at it. As I keep saying, international trade is easy as long as you don't have to make money.
Well, I think as Canadians, we have that capacity. And let's change some of the stuff you guys have said to adjectives. Innovative,
And
analytical.
take advantage of what's before you. The 145 offices of the Canadian Trade Commission.
Yeah,
The fact that Canada as a brand is about the most positive you can have in the world.
It is one of the
Leverage
biggest
of it.
brands in the world.
Why don't we leave it on that? David, thank you so much. We're at half an hour. Can you believe it? We could be talking
Yeah,
probably for another half.
we could do another hour.
And let's react to and chat with you again soon. John, we're going to bring back our guests.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And by then, who knows? There could have been another
Well, there will be.
changes.
There will be for sure, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You take care, both of you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to speak with you both.